Hey there. I was just talking to my husband about the work that I do. And in the conversation, so we were talking about how when we're in learning about ourself, how the impact of learning and self-development overflows into all domains. If I'm working on learning about how certain patterns are showing up with me, as an example, growing up, I didn't really know how to express sadness in a way where it was received in such a way where I felt safe or that was acceptable. And that was very common. 43 years old. So as I was growing up, that was a very common generational thing that happened. And so as an adult, when I realized, now we know so much more about emotional literacy and emotional intelligence, what happened with me is certain patterns I had when I was protecting myself, because if I expressed sadness, the way that it landed on other people was, like in my family, as an example, toughen up, don't be sad. So I learned how to hold it in. And so I didn't express sadness. So even when I felt sad, I learned how to override it and hold it in my body. So my body had a lot of constriction and constraint because of that holding. As an adult, that would get in my way with intimacy, with personal relationships, because vulnerability wasn't something that was accessible to me because I was holding it in. And so instead of expressing sadness, I might go right to anger or defense or resentment, and now that I am much more able to be with and express sadness and articulate it instead of reacting from it. I'm sad, oh no, and this is an unconscious thing that happens in our nervous system through patterns over time. So it's not like I'm sad, oh no, I have to hold my breath. It just was a learned experience from a very young age that when sadness showed up, I learned how to hold my breath, and I got really tight up in my upper chest and my upper back. Didn't know or recognize that at the time. But as I've been doing this work on self over the years, I've been aware of the patterns that are showing up and able to feel what's happening when something provokes sadness in me, feel the body sensation that's happening. So for me, it was constriction in my chest, my shoulders go forward. And so then being able to say, oh, there's that feeling that pattern I'm looking to break now. And so opening it up and being able to speak from that place. I'm feeling sad and here's why, or I need help. A lot of it for me was I'm sad and I feel helpless or powerless. So feeling that sadness, learning the patterns in my body, and then being able to articulate, have language from that place, helped me to get really close with my husband, because then I would say to my husband, I feel sad right now. And he'd be like, oh my gosh, you feel sad, come here. And yeah, I feel powerless. Oh, honey, what's going on? And I was able to speak to it in a way where he could listen to it and then give me the nurturing support that I needed, and breaking all the patterns from my childhood. So, and these are, it's not it's a narrative on how we are shaped by our environment, and we're all going to have different patterns. And we're always practicing something. So it's becoming clear on what are the things that are getting in my way. And it was from a coach, my coaching experience over the years, that someone was able to say to me, what is going on here? How do we break the patterns? Where do you want to go? And how do we shift your body and your story? And, one of the things for me, which is big for people, is asking for help. Another big thing that gets in the way of people is saying no. People tend to overcommit, say yes, and then they might be seen as flaky or not trustworthy, or they're always missing deadlines because they're saying yes to everything. And so it doesn't produce a trustworthy impression. Although when we say yes, if we're overcommitting to things, it's usually because we really want to please somebody else, or we want to show them, I can do this, I am capable. And so the opposite can happen. If we overcommit to too many things, we actually produce the opposite identity in people. Like, oh, she's not reliable. Or will you get back to me? Really? And so there's a story, there's a pattern, and it comes from again, how we were shaped, what we were influenced by growing up, and it's not even visible to us. It's just something that happens by default over time. So as Chris and I, my husband, were talking about the path and the work that I do, I am the CEO of the Institute for Generative Leadership, which is professional development, leadership development, and it's geared towards organizations, leaders. And when we say leaders, it's leaders in organizations, but it's also people who want to have a more of empowered leadership in their life. So it's not just about organizations. It's mostly, that's a side effect. It's mostly about the work on ourself, becoming self-aware, not only of who am I in this conversation or in this moment, what are the different conversational patterns that I'm in? What are the different emotions what are the emotions that I'm really familiar with and I react from often? And what are the emotions that I'm not quite as familiar with? Like an example is the sadness for me, that wasn't familiar. I coped with it with excessive alcohol and cigarettes and drugs growing up. I don't do that anymore. And then there's also anger is a big one. And this is cultural. In certain cultures, anger is something that just wasn't allowed or accepted. So a lot of times people aren't able to act from anger, but it's all the emotions are normal. So it's learning that anger, anxiety, fear, worry, happiness, sadness, all are normal. It's a matter of how are we able to harness that and then move from that. So the work that I do in life and at the Institute for Generative Leadership, and this is what this organization is all about, it's all about learning. It's about how we see the world based on our history. And it then in turn creates a new way of seeing. So there's a model called OAR. The O is the observer we are. And when we are the observer that we've always been, there's certain actions we take and we get certain results. And if those actions don't work, we try like hell again. We try more actions. We work harder, maybe one of them is. We work harder, longer hours, or we try, but we get the same results, or we don't get the results we want. Or maybe they shift a little bit, but they're not aligned with the amount of effort we're putting in. So that O piece, the observer piece, is the significant part of this whole OAR model, because when we're able to shift how we're observing, that's going to shift our actions and our results. So for me, one of the ways that I was observing, or I was blind. I was blind to the sadness part of it. So my observer was a certain way where sadness was held in. But when I realized I want to create more intimacy, I want to be more vulnerable so I can be more ingenuous. I want to be more authentic. How do I do that? I need to shift certain patterns. So when I shifted how I was processing sadness and speaking from it, that shifted my observer, and a whole different world context framing opened up for me. I didn't need to rely on my cigarettes, my alcohol, my drugs anymore. I could actually express it and get held in a way where it was supporting me. So it shifted my observer, and now the actions I take because of it, asking for help, is getting me different results. Whereas before I felt like I had to take it on all myself. So the work that I do, the side effect is, definitely different results in organizations. I also own and am the CEO of Desco Service, which is a field service company. We have doubled our revenue. Our profitability, we keep exceeding targets every year. And our employee retention, customer retention, all of that has shifted because I've shifted how I observe and engage because of this work. So this work is really about me in the world and then how I'm engaging with others. And that's shifting. But it really comes down to like how are we getting to understand and know ourselves and then engage in a different way. So I know that there's been some questions on, what exactly I do, what exactly is the Institute. I'm the new CEO there of the US affiliate. And that's really what it's about. It's transforming ourselves so we can, in turn, if we're leaders of organizations, we can shift the culture of organizations and the results and the profitability and the revenue and all that good stuff. And if we're not leaders of organizations, we're still leaders of our life if we choose to be. Or we can be victims and continue to do what we're doing. It doesn't matter what our socioeconomic status is. It doesn't matter what our race is. It doesn't matter what our gender is. It doesn't matter where we live in the world. We still can have power if we're able to see what the blind spots are and change how we observe and engage with that. So this is about, and for me, this is about bringing this learning to everybody, so they have a choice in how they want to engage with it and shift things. Now, people can choose to continue in the patterns that they are. That's their choice. A lot of times people don't know they have choice. So this work is all about creating the awareness. And that's what the Institute provides, is a curriculum, personal coaches, to then say, okay, you're not satisfied with something in your life. You've got some patterns, which is creating some barriers for you. Here's a way that you can take it in a structured way with a coach to shift your behaviors, which is going to shift how you see the world, shift the actions you're in, and as a result, shift the results. So you have totally different outcomes. Just wanted to share that with you today. If you have any questions about the work that I do, or if you are in any questions yourself or any barriers that you see, and if I can help guide you in a good direction, message me and let me know. Thanks.